Welcome to another Soulful Conversation. It is my pleasure to share with you today my dear friend, Ed Schreiber, psychologist and one of the leading experts in sociodrama, psychodrama in the world. Welcome, Ed.
Hey, Kristen, it's particularly good to see you today. 11/11, we decided to start this, and it's always good to see you.
Yeah, always good to see you. 11/11 on 1/11.
That's right.
And this one we're actually recording because I'm starting a retreat tomorrow, so this is one of the few that we're pre-recording. So let me start by asking you, why don't you tell us a little bit, for somebody who may not be familiar with psychodrama, sociodrama, tell us a little bit about that.
So it was started by JL Moreno, who was a psychiatrist in Vienna, Jewish immigrant who came to this country, and his wife, Zerka Moreno, who he met here. I studied with her for 25 years, wrote 2 books with her. But Moreno was a really interesting psychiatrist because he very dramatically broke with Freud. And I'll give you a very specific example from something that you said the other day that I heard about Carl Jung. But we'll come back to that, but about Moreno, he was a radical social activist in the Christian Judaic mysticism tradition. So he saw genius and capacity and strengths and brilliance rather than illness, repression, or pathology. And so the entire method of psychodrama, sociodrama, sociometry, is about accessing the capacity for brilliance. But there's one particular facet about that you touched about in something that I just saw you did the other day around referencing Carl Jung. And this one particular distinction about Moreno, I think will illustrate the difference between psychodrama and anything else. So you said, quoting or referencing Jung, the unconscious becoming conscious.
Yes.
The unconscious becoming conscious.
That is the process of enlightenment, is the unconscious becoming conscious.
The process of enlightenment is the unconscious becoming conscious. So here's where Moreno differs. So from a Morenian lens, the lens is the theory and the method that's applied in movement and action. It's a movement and action-based enlightenment process, meditation process. So the unconscious becoming conscious in this tradition is not the unconscious material from one's own psyche becoming conscious. It's from Moreno's perspective, the unconscious is what he called the Godhead, the presence of some intelligent force that manifests within us and around us and between us. That what he called, that's the unconscious that he was tapping. So it wasn't an individual's unknown interior pathology that became conscious. It's the presence of this Godhead, this intelligence, this mysticism, this mystic intelligence that moves people in relationship to one another, closer, farther. And it happens through strands of connection. Like when I think about our relationship from the start has been strands of connection.
Yes.
Those strands of connection drew us toward one another. You know, I remember you were teaching at Roe, we couldn't meet, but years later, that strand of connection, that intelligence, the nature of the Godhead, the presence of that intelligence drew us together. And we began a lot of work together that was pivotal, I believe, for both of our lives.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting? I remember exactly the place where walking into your place after finishing the retreat that I was doing at Roe, but I don't remember who wove that connection. how it was that I got to you.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
It's this intelligence that weaves this connection. We were paying attention to it, and we felt
Yes.
it in ourselves, in our bodies, and we both responded to that weaving. It's the, sociometry psychodrama is about the great weaver.
And
I
that's,
think
you know,
about
that's,
Clyde Hall and other, I'm sorry.
no, no, go for it. Then I want to go back to what you were just going to say. But the way that you were speaking about the unconscious in psychodrama, social drama, it helps me to understand the processes that I witnessed you facilitate. And that I actually feel so blessed that you took me and introduced me to Zerka when she was still alive. I think she was 95 when I met her.
Right.
But to see her in action, I feel very fortunate that I got to see that. And I think that's the way that you were just speaking about it makes me think that that is what you're tapping into when you're working with a group, and there's this energy field, this intelligence that we all have access to, that then you almost, it's not you're facilitating it, you're holding it and guiding it and evoking it.
Evoking it, pointing to it, humbling ourselves to it, inviting it, encountering it, experiencing it, embodying it, integrating it. And that's the difference between Moreno's work and really most any other psychology that I'm familiar with, is that it's not, the unconscious is this intelligence that moves in strands of connection. Now,
let me ask you this, because this might be something that people might relate to, because it's been family constellations work has been a little bit more popularized in movies and media and stuff like that. Is family constellations, is it fair to say that it grew out of social drama and psychodrama?
I think so. I mean, it may not name it, but so did Fritz Perl's work. Moreno was a pioneer, a radical social activist. And one of the distinctions about my work is a form of psychodrama, a form of sociometry. Sociometry is the science of invoking this mysticism in a group, with a group. So one of the distinctions that I had the privilege and honor of working with was Zerka, his wife, Zerka Moreno, for whom I've named a foundation, the Zerka Foundation. Zerka is the name of her and her great-grandmother, and it's also the original name of the Jordan River.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, where the hand of the Creator came and made life bloom in that fertile crescent. But there's a facet of their work that's amazing called social microscope or social microscopy, which in a group helps a group to find a mirror of our society in itself, in the structures that become visible. It makes the invisible visible. So the structures of our society and the structures of our civilization, the structures, the organizing structures of our world become visible in a group through a psychodramatic process using sociometry. And
So
then
pause on that for a second, because I want to make sure people are with us. Is it fair to say that psychodrama is one-on-one, where I might be working with you and then you have me do like an exercise with an empty chair? Is that the difference between
it's
psychodrama?
most often done in a group, with a group.
And what's the difference then with social drama? I thought social drama was when you work with a whole group.
Sociodrama is when the whole group is on the psychodramatic stage at the same time, working with themes and issues. But in all of his work, it's the same thing. The mysticism of connection with one another and with this, Moreno called it a first universe. Quantum physicists call it the quantum field. So we can actually feel the quantum field. We can feel the connection to it with one another. It's the space between us and inside of us too. So all of the work is about accessing this mysticism, this mystical state in an embodied, real, down-to-earth way.
So let me ask you this: somebody who's watching this and they feel really resonant and want to work with you, help us imagine how you would work with a client one-on-one.
Mostly right now, I'm working one-on-one with clients around the world through Zoom. And we look at the material There's a study guide that is accessible through me. All of the material is in the study guide. And the study guide is basically the Moreno's ideas and the instructions for how to do this. And then I think it's very important for people to understand their ideas and then how to implement this. And then I coach, facilitate, oversee, and supervise that implementation.
And are you still training other coaches, therapists, practitioners, or anybody who might be interested in learning how to
Absolutely.
facilitate? You're still doing that. Great.
Yes. Including at Lesley University, which is in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yes.
But
And we'll have a website so people can reach out to you.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think that it's the single most profound, besides you.
Yeah.
Besides you, it's the single most profound awakening process that I'm aware of.
It's a beautiful thing. And I've witnessed, watching you do the work, like stuff that emerges that it's beyond the mind, like the intelligence of the group and how the group moves in it or is moved by that energy is really fascinating and beyond logic.
And and I'm thinking about what you just said, because when that intelligence becomes palpable, noticeable, sense felt in the group, me, my ego, my individuated sense of self, is experiencing that. It's experiencing what's beyond the ego, what's unformed, that can't be formed, but it's in every form. And so the ego kind of resists that at first, but realizes this is a very safe experience that is enlightening, for sure. So it's that, and it's what's beyond the ego that's experienced.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I want to, and we'll go back to some of the things that you were bringing up, Ed, but one of the things I want to make sure that we speak about, because I know that it's your experience and your journey can definitely be supportive to people watching this who might be doing what you did, the straddling the 9 to 5 job or the job that pays the bills, but the heart wasn't necessarily in it. And at the same time that we're feeling called to do something else, something greater, something deeper that's much more connected to our soul level, mission level work. Talk about that process in you, how you straddled, how you managed and navigated that straddling of two realities. Like in your case, it was still on brand, if you would. It was still the work that you were doing was still congruent with your calling as a psychologist, but it wasn't quite as satisfactory, or the level of work that you were able to do wasn't quite what you're able to do with psychodrama and sociodrama. So talk about how you navigated straddling that and
Well,
how you finally were able to put both feet together in your real soul level, mission level work.
the first remarkable thing to say is that I survived it.
And I did too.
Yes, you did too. Thank you. Just for those that are listening, at one point I was so imbued and invested in the corporate structure of providing counseling support that this fire was never really out, but the fire was sort of just embers. And Christian, you came into my life at that point in the stories we kind of told, and
Yes.
you fanned the fire. But I think of
But
it,
to give it a little bit more clarity and explain is that you were working in a more institutional psychiatric setting,
right, an
which
outpatient
had a lot
daycare.
of limitations and rules that is not what you.
So I had to navigate the compromise
Yes.
of what I was here to do and here to do with what I felt I had to do, safe to do, needed to do to stay, financially secure in this environment, in this culture. I had to
Yes.
navigate that by never losing touch with what really my soul's purpose was and is. But it came to a point where And there were cycles of this where that compromise became intolerable. I couldn't bear it anymore.
That's the part that we both survived.
And there was times where I felt like it was tearing me apart. There were two
I
parts of
know.
me: compromised, living inside of this system, doing what that system asked of me, and this larger, broader, deeper, more realized way of being and helping and guiding, which was really calling me all of my life, even as a child.
I know.
So it just got to the point where I said, I don't really care anymore what happens. If I just have to do this, because, you know, our lives are limited in terms of this physical body, and I need to accomplish this, what I agreed to, in this physical body while I'm still here. And so everything had to sort of take second place, but not really
Yeah.
sort of. It had to take second place to doing what I'm doing now.
Yes. So before I wanted to get more into that, into what you're doing now. But my former teacher, when I used to talk about the process you're describing as doing the splits. We have one foot on one reality, the 9 to 5 corporate reality, because I know your work wasn't 9 to 5, technically. And the other one in the spiritual realm and in your soul level, mission level work. So once you finally got to that point, you couldn't stand it anymore, doing the splits, and you put both feet in this reality. What was that like? What have you learned?
Freedom, liberated freedom,
Yes,
full integration, being
yes,
present in my body, not
yes,
being split,
yes,
facing forward with courage that doesn't seem hard anymore.
yes,
Or enlightenment, or whatever Moreno called it, the integration of these two universes in the body.
yes.
This
And
integration
what about in the
seems,
financial arena? Did you end up homeless?
say that again?
What about in the looking at the financial arena, which is what keeps people in that
I'm in
prison?
a financially more stable place than I've ever been, but it
Thank
was
you.
all facilitated by
Thank
this
you.
relationship with the Godhead, with the first universe, with the quantum field, with my purpose, and with my
Yes.
sustained, that's sustained commitment to that purpose. I think that the one thing I've done right is sustain the commitment.
Yeah.
And that was unyielding in terms of relationships, even my current marriage. This commitment to this purpose is primary.
Yes.
It
Yes.
has to
And I
be.
can vouch for that. You never wavered from that.
Well, the one time when you had to kind of knock me to the side a little bit,
A couple of
but
times.
I'm
A couple
joking.
of times where I
Never
had to
really
smack you
wavered.
upside the head.
That you did, but I never really did waver, because I think that was part of the strand of connection that initially brought us together, is that non-wavering commitment.
Yeah, and let's clarify that, because I don't think you wavered.
No, I don't
I
think so.
think in those moments you just allowed the fear of how will I survive if I quit my corporate job. Um, I think
One
that
thing
you
I want
just
to mention, just to clarify, I don't call myself a psychologist. I really have it's a TEP. It's trainer, educator, practitioner in this discipline of Moreno. So
okay,
I don't use the word psychologist. I just want to make sure that that's known. But
but you do
that
have a PhD,
I have 2 master's degrees.
2 masters. Okay,
Yeah.
all
But
right,
this training as a TEP, which is kind of our version of the equivalent of a long postgraduate study. Okay. But what were you saying? That's that world.
right. So yeah, that's what I wanted to highlight. That when you finally followed the calling of your soul, the spiritual calling, that I'm so delighted to hear you say that you have even more financial security in the way from the perspective of the world now that you did then.
Yes.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
and it surprises me. Um, it just does.
So talk a little bit more about now about your work and the work that the Zerka Foundation is doing these days.
So the the body of work of Moreno is well documented in many books, but the piece that I'm doing, called Social Microscope, which looks at the mirror, which helps the group to see itself as a mirror of the structures of our society. of privilege, access, and power. Privilege, access, and power. These are ways our society is structured. That becomes mirrored into the group. So using an action tool, psychodramatic, sociometric action tool called social microscopy, a group can see that within itself. Then, when that happens, when the group sees that within itself, it becomes obvious that what is seen can only have been created in relationship to this intelligence with us, to this enlightened state with us, to this embodied state with us. That the structures, the social, remember, Moreno was the founder, the grandparents, Zerka and JL Moreno were the grandparents of social network theory. So when this social network becomes visible inside of a group that mirrors society, that accesses the mysticism of the Godhead. Zerka called it the autonomous healing center. The autonomous healing center is the interplay between the first and second universe, between the vast, unformed, enlightened state and form, us. That interplay is what gets accessed in the group. That's my work. And it's under the banner of the Zerka Foundation.
Okay, so let me give you this example. Say that I'm the owner of a small corporation, or the head of a team at a larger corporation, or a sales team or a production team. And we call you to work with us as a group. What might that look like?
Well, I'll answer in terms of what Moreno might say through me or with me. Moreno would say that in your organization, there is a central underlying structure that's determining the functioning of your organization that's not visible. One of the things we can do is make that visible to you and to the group. And when that happens, that accesses enlightened states of productivity, functioning, brilliance, genius, relationship, and cohesion. But you can't get there without going through this portal. Or another way to say that is going through this portal of this training exercise accesses those.
Yes, and one thought that came to mind as you were speaking was, the piece that I wrote, that you can't namaste the shadow away. Because in spiritual circles, there's so much spiritual bypassing, where everything is love and light, but we don't want to dive into the shadow stuff. In your work, are you taking the group into the shadow stuff?
That's the first part.
Yeah.
The first part is that shadow, but it's a little different than what you might be thinking about or others might be thinking about.
Good.
Because it's the collective shadow. It's the shadow of our civilization. It's the shadow of our culture that impacts every single one of us. Either we're privileged by it, or we're abused by it. The shadow is what's seen in that first phase of the social microscope. Not my own, but my own too. But the shadow of humanity, the collective ego, and how it has impacted all of us. That becomes visible, and it's upsetting. It's hard to see, but it's also very surprising in how quickly it transforms into something that's healing.
Beautifully said. Ed, you and I have talked for hours and could speak for hours, and we'll do so again. And I want to make sure that we honor your time and we stick to the 20-25 minutes we agreed to. As we wrap up our time together, anything else that pops into mind, any final words, any thoughts that you want to make sure you mention in this conversation?
We're all connected. We're all sitting, standing, living on a structure of reality in which all of us are connected at all times to this intelligence. We are that. It is us. It's where we emerged from and where we return to. Might as well find it now.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for those beautiful words. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your wisdom with us. And let's get together soon, Ed. It's been too much time.
Yes. Thank you, Christian, so much for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Bye.